I'm Ruth Thompson, the editor of Two Fine Crows Books and Saddle Road Press. It is my great pleasure to celebrate the publication of Tania Pryputniewicz's wonderful Heart's Compass Tarot, Discover Tarot Journaling and Create Your Own Cards. I've known Tania for over 10 years as a brilliant poet and a generous, gifted writing teacher, as well as a magical tarot reader and tarot muse to her students. Now in this workbook, she brings her original heart-centered approach to making the tarot your own. Tarot journaling, making your own cards and symbols, exploring various layouts, diving deeply into certain cards, playing with art and writing. Heart's Compass really does offer an approach for a lifetime of tarot improvisation and deepening intuition. I think it offers something both for the complete newbie and for the longtime practitioner. 3 of Tania's students are also here today. Gillian Barlow, an Australian writer and architect specializing in Aboriginal housing. Hi, Gillian. Carrie Nassif, a psychologist, artist, and poet in Kansas. Hi, Carrie. And Lisa Rizzo, a memoirist and poet who just retired from teaching in Northern California. Hi, Lisa. One more note before we begin, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to answer as many questions as there is time for. So Tania, one of the most unusual things about Heart's Compass, I think, is how you've incorporated original tarot cards and tarot-inspired essays and poetry and layouts that you and your students created. It seems to me such a gentle and non-threatening way of leading people into their own relationship with the tarot. How did you begin making cards and tarot poetry yourself? And how did you begin incorporating these things in your classes?
Thank you so much, Ruth. I just want to thank you for the amazing gift of having the book be here at all. It's been an incredible journey, and I just am so grateful. It's been an extremely lifelong journey, I guess I would say. I first fell in love with the tarot way back when I was an undergraduate student going through love trials of my own and trying to figure out who I was. And really, I began journaling to 1 card a day just to kind of slow down and look at the image in the card. There was a deck in the house and it wasn't being used, and I took it over. I didn't have the guidebook, so I could establish a conversation on my own just by trying to guess what was in the imagery in the card. And as a poet and an artist, the tarot is a language of imagery, and it tells the story of the human soul. So it was a very natural fit as a young artist and writer to look at the cards and say, what's the story in there? And then to write my way to saying, what's my story? What's going on with me?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't too far of a leap to start looking at the way other poets and writers played with the tarot. Such a long century, all the way back story from the 12th century until now. So many tarot conversations going on over time. And then it seemed like such a natural fit also to play with other writers and artists and see what the tarot would speak to them about. And more than anything, just to find a beginning way to dialogue with those 78 images. And there's 3 layers of the images with the daily life cards. And then there's people cards that show you parts of you or ways you might come across other characters. And then the soul arc, where you're moving from the Fool card all the way to the world, where you kind of understand who you are in the community, with many stops on the way. And we might not go through all of those soul expressions, but they're there to take inspiration and heart from. And there are many interpretations of those journeys as there are people making decks. So there's hundreds of decks out there. And so what's kind of special about this book and the cover, the Heart's Compass, that's my personal Fool card, where I felt like for many years I was a fool in love. But for me to grow as a person, I had to say, oh my goodness, it's okay. I went north, south, east, west, and had so many experiences and really was upset with myself. Oh, you idiot, what are you doing again? You know, and it's an ongoing journey, but without my heart, I wouldn't be here. And each of those directional pulls had a lessons for me, and I didn't always like the lesson. And you know, and in fact, it's a humorous side note that at one point I had the compass points wrong, and my life coach was like, Tania, you're north, south, they're all in the wrong direction, so get those fixed. So I'm really delighted that I was able to start sharing some of these ideas with tarot students over the years. And these three women on the call today are so special to me, as is Ruth. We got to play a bit in the desert, met each other in the desert with a group of writers. And then from there, we worked together over Zoom. It wasn't even pandemic induced. I think it was back in 2016. And they were willing to walk through a journey with me, take sort of a pilgrimage where I was really thinking about how can we take a tarot card and bring it into living. So we sort of went on these journeys each week where we'd say, what outside, how can I take my little tarot eye out into the world and see a living expression of the Ace of Cups about love? Or how can I then come home and journal about it and maybe draw my own symbol? Like, what do I think love is about? So today we're each going to have a minute to talk about our journeys with our Fool cards, and that the Fool is, at the outset, you could say, who's being a fool? But the beautiful, more beautiful way to look at that is who's willing to risk again, to start over, and how lovely is that? So for me, it was this compass. I went all over the place, but I'm still here, willing to love. And, you know, on that note, I would just love to hear from these beautiful women about how they came to their images. And we're going to share the images on the screen so you'll get to see their cards, their Fool cards, their beginnings. Lisa.
Okay, so this was really my Fool card. That was a great way to start with it because I do not see myself as a visual artist. I still don't after making these cards. So it was a big leap for me to try to create my own cards, especially in the company of Carrie and Gillian, who are and Tania, who are all talented visual artists. And so that's why I named my card The Beginner, because I felt like I was a beginner. And it was such, once I decided on that and thought, well, I'm going to keep going, it was an easy way for me to, you know, think about taking those steps and creating something that I was not comfortable with. And Tania talked about being in the desert. One of the things that we did at that writing retreat that we were in the desert, we were talking about, you know, got to the point where it was power hands, and, you know, where you lift your arms above your head in a powerful pose. And so that I knew that that's what my Fool card had to be. My Fool had to be going up those steps like that.
Mm. I love this card.
Thank you.
You want to read, Lisa? You're
Oh,
beautiful.
sure, I'll read it. The beginner starts the ascent up a large set of stairs filled with joy and reckless hope. Her body is pale green as young leaves, symbolizing birth and spring. The steps are steep and rocky without a handhold to steady her steps. She doesn't even notice. Instead, she leaps higher and higher with her arms flung in the air in great abandon, reaching for the sun rising before her. A circle begins to unfurl, spiraling with potential. So that was I felt like I was the one spiraling out and opening up, because after this card, it wasn't as hard for me to imagine myself creating art after that.
Okay, I'm Carrie. I'll just go ahead and read the key. This is my Fool card. And I kind of saw, like all of us, myself as the Fool. That kind of, for me, it felt like ambiguity and that kind of, am I beginning, am I ending, like that risk versus that potential reward. So the key I wrote to this card is, my simplicity is underestimated, or my complexity is misunderstood. Sometimes I'm a dreamer confusing folly for wisdom. The wall in front of me is actually a door, or not. I'm uncertainty itself, the pause between the nexus of multiplicity. I'm a pilgrimage of unfolding potentials. I expand my own limits. I'm an ancient alchemy of play, intuition, synchronicity, abandon, and trust. And I really felt like the whole process, as I went back and kind of reread Tania's book and was remembering how we had kind of gone through the class, I really felt like there was this, well, there's always a synchronicity whenever I work with the tarot. I just kind of always dabbled in it a little bit. But I would go to the cards and I would want to like know something about myself or understand my situation, especially, you know, during times of personal transition. But it was this passive experience and I'd never applied it to my writing. And when I finally was able to kind of go through these exercises and look at what the symbols might mean and what different decks may say, and find for me what kind of gelled and crystallized and all kind of became this convergent sense of what I thought that particular card should mean. As I began to like look around in the world or in my house for my own little, like I've got a little thing of feathers here and shells and these different, like a magpie, all these little symbols that I've already collected, and like, oh wait, that's this, you know. And I think that all of those steps, you know, picking and choosing from the parts that made sense really kind of combined so that I felt so much more agency and freedom, and could define the suits in a way that was intuitive for me. And a lot of times until I start that drawing process, I didn't know what that was exactly going to be. And so there's something about kind of taking the world around me and having it go through my head and my heart and then back into my hands that really developed a really different relationship, I think, with the tarot than I would have had before having any of these classes. And so I think it gave me a sense of connection and consolidation, not just with the tarot, but also with the different symbols that I discovered or that I claimed or reclaimed or co-opted or however you want to use it. And at this point, I'm still kind of going through and reconceptualizing a tarot. I'm working on my own tarot deck as well, in kind of a different way of conceptualizing it that's more cyclical and less hierarchical. I don't know that I'll ever get it to a point of publication, but working on it is exciting, and I get to kind of keep those antennae, you know, aware of life whispers, connections, those kind of synchronicities, and I get to redefine myself with every card that I create. And so it's been this like lasting gift. What is it, almost 4 or 5 years ago? And so it's continuing on here.
Carrie, did you want to tell us about your suits? Because we, you know, the tarot has earth and water represented in some way, but I think you played quite a bit with that, right? And named your own suits. Is that changing or evolving?
In this one, in this particular picture for our practices, I had, oh, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I had water, which was depths, and earth, which was, I think, seeds and growth, and fire, which is change. And I can't recall what the air was. Maybe that was intuition or inspiration. It was something to do with the mind. And in the deck that I'm wanting to make, I have 8 different suits of 8 different types. So I've got 8 different phases of the moon, 8, well, the 7 chakras, and then the breathing. And so I've got 8 different suits of different things, because that seemed to me to be less, I don't know, it just seemed to be more recursive, which seems to me how life is. So
That's
yeah.
cool. I'd love to see it.
Oh, I'll work on it. I'm working on it every day. So
So my sound's gone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great. Okay. So yes. So my fall came out of starting again, and I guess my intuitive thing around starting again was with a phoenix coming out of burnt ashes, and very likely at the time there were fires in Australia, so it was very much a symbol of what was happening at that time. This card that I drew was from a whole sort of sequence that I was doing, and I just sort of went over and over them, cutting and pasting and doing more and more spirals. And I think, as Tania has put in her book, I sort of became quite obsessive about it and everything. It was just really absorbing, and I just loved it. So and from Tania's course, I can remember very, very distinctly, I was working out some distance away from where I live, and I would catch the bus to my workplace, and with my mind feverishly, thinking around what we'd been doing, what we'd been discussing, what I'd seen of what Lisa and Carrie and Tania were doing. And it was just the most fantastic and synchronistic experience. I just loved every minute of it. And Tania's such a kind, very good-hearted, very creative teacher. And it was just extraordinarily wonderful to have this experience with her. So, I can't thank her enough for it. And with Carrie and Lisa too, it was just this great, great experience. So my card said, and I can't see it because my screen's gone a bit weird, but it's this struggling bird, not at all phoenix-like, is trying to escape earthly ties, while the last one seems to be more pinned to the earth and settled. I'm not sure it delivered on the full card, although I learned quite a bit about spirals. I drew and photocopied and cut and pasted and drew over with a feverish delight, like a person possessed. Like a fool, I loved it. So yes, the whole refinding of drawing, because I hadn't done much drawing before doing this course with Tania, seeing how Carrie and Lisa approached their cards, and being able to pull those into my own thoughts around things. That whole starting over was just really, really terrific, and I've loved seeing this book to be able to kind of re-find again that excitement around the tarot cards and what it can bring to your life.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I love this. I love this painting. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Great. We would love to take any questions from the chat, and I'm thinking, just while we're looking at the questions, just the question for the three of you: where are you now in your tarot journey? I know Carrie's working on a deck, but if there's anything more you want to say about that, or is there a new deck you're using, or any updates?
I can say something. I was surprised. I've been working at a university. My contract finished at the untimely time at the beginning of the pandemic. So I've been working at home, and I did National Novel Writing Month in November last year. And I found in that, I was just sort of writing. It was really nothing particularly whatever, but I found myself returning to the cards, the tarot cards, and drawing each day a card that would sort of inspire my day's writing, which was a wonderful thing to do. And where it leads is, yeah, like it's a wonderful surprise when you sort of start writing, using it as a beginning, and then sort of see where it takes you. So that was, yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, I'm working on a manuscript, and am now of a memoir, and am now in the real deep into the revision process. And what I've been doing is pulling, before I start some difficult part of my writing, I pull cards and do a reading. and, asking a question. And that's been really interesting. I haven't, looking at this book now and talking with everybody, thinking, God, maybe I should go back to doing some artwork. I just retired in June, so I have more time on my hands. And so it made me think about, going back and doing some artwork, not just pulling cards that other people have created, but perhaps, and I just thought of that, wow, that'd be a really interesting way to approach some revision, is to draw something and try to get my mind going with that. But I've still been working with the cards pretty regularly.
And I feel like for me, I'm also working kind of on an autobiographical poetry collection. So I'm kind of at the beginning, whereas Lisa, you're kind of on the backside of that. And I know there's been a couple of retreats I've gone to where I go to this little cabin that has no water or electricity for a week. And I'll pull cards in the hotel the day before and kind of like, okay, I want to kind of deepen, like, how do I deepen? What do I need to know in order to deepen and kind of go within? And so that's been invaluable. And I think that's part of where the idea for the new deck kind of came from too. It's like, I don't know where these fit as well. And so I want something that's more intuitive to me, but it's still a daily kind of part of life, I think. So.
Yeah, beautiful. There's so many conversations and ways to use the cards to inspire poetry or essays or blog posts, and that sort of the idea behind the tarot journaling of coming to a deck pure or just from your own conversational point of view with the imagery gives you a chance to have a conversation, and then looking at what the deck maker intended gives a whole nother lens into the writing, and sort of there's a way to have a conversation with yourself, with the deck maker, with the artist. Sometimes the artist is different than the person writing the book. And then when we make that leap to what is the symbol for me, like this card is representing an archetypal presence around fire or creativity, or how the sun might make a seed blossom. But what is that inside of me? And what happened in the past that lit me up around creativity and fire, or how was I blocked from that? And we could draw many versions of our story depending on where we are in time. And then it's even fun then to turn and look into the future and say, what would I like to bring in? And those are all different stories. So it's just exciting. I see a question here from Haley. What advice do each of you ladies have for art shy tarot lovers? Tarot lovers, how do you get past self-criticism and move into the flow of creative state?
Well, can I answer that? Because if you're art shy, you have no idea how freaked out I was when I first started this. I started the class and then went, what am I thinking? And Carrie was the one who helped me go forward, because I told everyone, I'm really freaked out by this whole thing. What do I do? And she said, you draw. I can't remember exactly your words, but it was something like, you draw what is in you. And whatever it is, whatever comes out is good. And so it was good. I think we started with the Fool card. Is that correct? And that was the good one, because it was like, okay, I'm going to be the Fool. I'm going to jump. And, we can all draw, at least on some level. And so I think that was, oh, yes, you can, Ruth. So that just jump. That's my, because it became very joyful after I decided to just not be insecure.
Yeah, and I remember Carrie was taking photographs too, and there were just this opening out of forms too. Like you could make images in clay and photograph them, or you could dance, or you could sing, or just music. You could bring any self to the introspection or the process. And so we did spend some time talking about, oh, let's not be mean to ourselves as we make our art. But that's where books like The Artist's Way come in, or if you really wanted to delve much deeper into the sort of how to break free of some of that, there's other support around that. But in our class, we just supported each other to be nice to ourselves. And if you don't like it, we draw another one or do another take, and kindness has to come to the fore in the process.
I think too, to just jump in on that, a lot of my research I did as a psychologist was on creativity, and that ability to suspend judgment, I think, is the most important thing. Just to kind of get in there, get your hands dirty, and don't worry about the product. Just kind of get yourself to a place where you can get your toe in the water to start to enjoy that process, whether it is, whatever medium it is. And I think that the different places that you draw from in your book, Tania, where you have like go back in your life experiences and kind of where were you the fool in in your timeline, it kind of prepares you to have these really rich waters to draw from then when you do decide to express something. And then that creative expression is a form of resilience once you let yourself push through that fear.
Yeah, that's a nice point, Carrie. So the writing helps you prepare because you've been connecting it to your own lived experiences or your own hopes and dreams or fears even, right? And then once we name the fear, then we can say, well, what's the antidote to that? What's the symbol that would help me walk through that door in a different way? Let's see, I see lots of questions in there. Which decks are you each enamored with and have you used throughout your life? So I'll let you guys have it that.
My first tarot deck was one that Gillian actually sent me after we met in the desert. And it's a tarot of 1001 Nights. And it's these beautifully illustrated, really painterly kinds of stories. And so that for me, that's still my only deck until I make my own. But that's been mine.
Yeah, the one I've been using is the Australian Contemporary Dreamtime Tarot, which has completely confounding cards, which really led into what Tania was talking about, I guess. And I connected with very deeply. It's not actually done by an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander person, but somebody who had spent a long time within the desert, and it came to them. So yeah, they're really fantastic. Very different suits, if you like, and very different symbols and things. So yeah, really terrific. Plus, I think I was using an American, an Emily Dickinson, lot of cards as well. It had insects and things in it, which was also a lot of fun. And I just found them very confusing. I'm not that connected to insects. So it was really good to sort of find what connections I did have through them.
Well, taking Tania's advice, not advice, but following Tania, I started collecting tarot cards. I have a whole box full of decks, but I don't, unless I really respond to the images, I kind of put them aside. But what the deck, I don't have the book or the cards with me right now, but the Shining Tribes deck is my favorite right now. It's what I use the most. I love it. And I just feel it's very inspirational for me before I start writing. So
yeah, that's a Rachel Pollack Shining Tribe. Yeah. I know I learned on the Mother Brown deck, and around the same time, the Daughters of the Moon, created by the 13 different women artists, had also come out. And then very quickly, I also started learning the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which came out around the turn of the century, just for the reason that it sort of gives a very strong story cards through the daily life cards. And even though we've evolved so much that maybe some of the stories might not resonate as much, it's a very good solid deck, Rider-Waite-Smith. And there's actually a variation my students told me about called the Witch Tarot that's very similar to the Rider-Waite, but has more diverse images in it. So I would recommend learning on one that has picture stories. And what I mean by that is you have ace, 2, 3, 4 to 10 in discs. And if you get a deck that just shows you 2 discs or 3 discs or 4 discs, there's not much story in there for you to resonate with initially until you learn the numbers and what the numbers mean. So that would be my one suggestion for beginners, to let yourself love the artwork and fall in love with the deck, but see if there's a story picture in the 40 minor arcana daily life cards. So yeah, just once you learn one system, then you can kind of translate whether someone is calling it crystals or swords or fire or arrows. people will use different designations, but you can understand. So here's a question from Nicola, who says, which tarot card would you pick for today? I'd love to hear from each of you, and I would say the Ace of Cups, which is overflowing with love, expression of love, my gratitude for all of you on this call, and my gratitude for my students over the years. Over 25 years now, I've been playing with the tarot and had a chance to work with so many beautiful people. My love for Ruth and Dawn for putting together the book. Also, one of my first tarot teachers I want to shout out is Quan Tracy. Met him in Iowa City and did some tarot work with him that seeded my love for symbols and coming from a place of compassion. So I would pick Ace of Cups. What about you?
Well, I think the Fool was a good card for today because I've never done a panel like this. And so that was really good. You know, that's good to think about jumping in and doing something that, you know, is new. And especially because Tania, you're the person who taught me about tarot and, you know, have guided me. I've taken many of your classes. I did, you know, I took your journaling with tarot and writing with tarot, and, you know, and so it's not just the, you know, making my own cards. And so I think just, you know, you always were encouraging me to try something new with this. And so I think the Fool was a good one for today.
Yeah, I'd confer. I was thinking that too, but then I just drew a card, which gave me the Hanged Man, which is also like a beginning, you know, sort of turning everything upside down and sort of seeing what's going to happen next, shaking things out and seeing what's going to fall there. So yes, I think that's probably very apt too. I was going to say that I'm not that familiar with them still, you know. For me, it sort of takes a long time to sort of learn things. So I couldn't predict, but, you know, I agree with Lisa around the Fool and the Hanged Man. So
I would maybe add in the Magician real quick, just because that's where we ended, and because it felt like the Magician can kind of use all the different suits, and it kind of is maybe a master of some of the things that it's kind of like the counterpart, I guess, of the Fool. And I think that's, I think I feel more and more the Magician, maybe as I get older, but also maybe as I have more experience with the tarot and or tarot, and kind of like how I'm using it in my life.
Yeah, I love that you just pulled a card, Gillian, with us right now. That's really fun. And I'm thinking about that, you know, the upside down, the hanged one is being held still for a bit. And usually it's a lot of the interpretations will show like a beautiful orb of sunlight coming from behind that head that's been turned upside down. And it's sort of a reminder of that gifts that come from when we've been really stilled. And I would say that as the planet, we've been really stilled and mode, and we are just now maybe starting to see some of the sunshine from the changes that we might make to bring more light to the surface. But definitely we still are upside down. That's beautiful that you pulled that. And also, Carrie, I love what you said about the Magician, which I love to think of as someone who's taking our ordinary tools in front of us and making something extraordinary that feels magical and inspiring. So I can't wait to see what deck you create and just the writing that the rest of you create. And that's really the blessing of the Fool card today, is where you all helped us put this out here to show others how you can play and leap off from the tarot as a starting point. So it's we're at the beginning of a creation story with everyone else who will pick up the book and go forward from here and be part of our tarot discovery family.
I just realized too, of course, the Hanged Man being upside down, here I am on the other side of the earth, upside down. So yes, it's very apt.
I was going to say in the Mother Peace cards, you know, what's the big celebration one where all of us are celebrating together? The 10 of Hearts, the 10 of Cups. Isn't that what it is? Anyway, that sort of came to my mind, where all of them are, because it's a real, this is the launch for your book, but also it's kind of celebrating what we've all been friends for a long time. So that's really nice. Yeah.
Beautiful. I'm seeing a question here, wondering when we start to reclaim tarot, how did they evolve? Do they need to retain certain key elements and parameters? And I think maybe, I came to the tarot as a sort of, what would you call it, uncontrollable improviser and wanting to play and leap off and go take the structure and say, what doors can it open for us past that structure? But it's true, when you call it a tarot deck, that usually means there are 78 cards, there are the 40 minors, there are 16 court cards, there are the 0 to 21, so really 23 majors when you count the Fool card. And it's really one system of looking at soul. Are you going to pass? Are all of us going to pass through the Fool, the Magician, the Priestess, the Emperor, the Empress? Maybe and maybe not. And maybe there are arcanum that have not been made yet, just for fun. For example, my son made me one for my birthday, the Poet, which is not in the deck. So maybe this is a new arcanum. But and I'm being a little playful with this right now. But like if you look at Carolyn Mace's work with the archetype deck, she fills in a vast, huge array of archetypes that you might not see in traditional tarot, and has shadow attributes so that you can look at the shadow work and the light self. So people have used the tarot as a leaping place we're constantly evolving, so the tarot conversation is changing. And then I think if we leap too far, maybe in our deck ends up being an improvisation deck, or we name it something else, but it has its roots in the tarot. So that's a really good question. And I think probably everybody here would answer that a little bit different. Do you have to have your 4 elements? Carrie's going to have 8 different designations for energies, and she's looking at cycles and looking at nature. So, and I'm thinking about the huge variety of decks. If you want to learn something about plant life, there's the herbalist deck. If you want to learn about Celtic history, Celtic, Druid, Afrocentric, out of Spain, any culture is going to have their own set of symbols. And yeah. So what do you guys think about that question? What do you need to retain, you think?
Lisa, I'm sorry, you're talking
No,
about.
go ahead.
I think that it's nice to have the limitations to kind of narrow you down and give you a place to start. But I like obviously I like being able to improvise and kind of make it my own, and kind of see what falls out of it.
I think, there's the symbolism of the original decks come from human emotions and human symbolism and desires. And I think that's what we retain in all these other decks. And because I have, like you, Tania, I have a ton of different ones. And it's fascinating how they connect, even if they call cards something different and take a different approach. But there's that basic symbolism remains, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the groundedness of a deck that's come out of a historical sense. Yeah, so, but I liked that then it was you can use that as a leap to somewhere else, wherever you want it to go, really. Yeah.
Tania, there was a question I think is a really good one. I don't know if you saw it. How would the absolute tarot beginner jump in?
That is a good question. And Lisa is saying you could start with a very, very gentle approach, very welcoming. But then someone else is that, yeah, so the absolute tarot beginner, I would spend some time, if we weren't under a pandemic, I'd say go into your bookstore and browse sections to look at decks and let your eyes and your heart guide you with the imagery. And it's probably true that you won't fall in love with every single card in a deck, but you do want to resonate with the artwork. And like I said earlier, I tend to suggest the Rider-Waite-Smith, although I'll also be suggesting the Witch Tarot that has similar structure and imagery now, but just so that you have a way to learn the system of the cards, and then you can leap from there to any deck. So, and the invitation with tarot journaling is that you can go as slow or as fast as you want. Pick any pace of connection that works for you. Do you want to write once a week? Do you want to write once a month? I have a chapter in the book about working with a friend. So tarot for two, find a tarot buddy, and maybe you'll pick different decks or the same one, and you can talk to each other and read the work to one another. Very powerful. I've had a tarot friend for many years, and she and I started out doing a card a month. We would pull a card for the month, live, and then at the end of that month, we'd write and pick up the phone and read our reading to each other about how we lived that one card. And since then, that play has evolved. For a while, we picked 3 cards a day. And now we're up to picking 6 cards a day from 2 different decks. And we shoot each other messages on Marco Polo about how we're living those cards. That's daily. So that's quite sped up and pretty ramped up. But we've been playing for so long, we know each other and the cards that we're talking about. So I just would encourage the beginner, 1 card, 1 window of time. And maybe you don't want to journal, maybe you want to draw, or you might just want to have a friend you talk to about the card and what you're seeing and what you think, how you've lived it. So you get to set the pace and go with your heart around that tarot imagery. Let's see, Marnie is asking, would you ever consider making your own deck with your art? Thank you, Marnie. And a big shout out to Marnie, because it was in her thought leader class that I brought in my Heart's Compass manuscript at the very beginning stages as an outline. And Ruth let me go to AWP and do writer's block card readings, but Marnie got behind me to finish the book, and my San Diego writing group showed up for me over and over again, as did my Flamingo group that I met in the desert. So her question, the deck, it's coming, I'm just not done. It's taking me a long time, and I got sidetracked doing improvisations based on 3 tarot cards. So like Carrie, I'm not sure if my deck is going to end up being a deck of tarot improvisations with writing prompts, or if it's going to be a more traditional 78 card deck. But it's in the works. Thank you, Marnie.
How many cards have you made?
You know what? During the pandemic, I started a whole series of little improvisations. I'm not sure how many I have, like maybe 30 of those, and then the cards we made together that show up in this book. I think I have more than I realize. I just need to, now I'm done drafting this, and maybe I can go back to looking at the deck. So, yeah, thank you, Marnie.
Someone asked about your classes and workshops, Tania.
Oh.
So you should.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I am teaching a tarot journaling class through San Diego Writers Inc. every Monday, and we are just journaling 1 card every week, every Monday. So that's a drop-in class through them. And I'm getting ready in April for National Poetry Month to do a tarot poetry challenge, 30-day challenge, where I'll send you a prompt with a tarot card every day. And then we would meet over Zoom. So that's through San Diego Writers Inc. too. And then I also teach through Antioch University's continuing education program. And with them, we're walking through the majors and doing the writing tarot pilgrimage piece where we're looking at the majors. So we just got done with the first 6 cards, and you could join me at the end of March for the Emperor through the Chariot cards. So all of that is up on my website, and I think Haley has the links to all of that we could put in the chat, Facebook. So yeah, any other comments or thoughts from you? Ruth, what about you in your tarot journey? I feel like I didn't get to hear from you about yours. And you have a book coming out too.
Not about tarot, but yeah, it's called Quick Water Oracles. I was going to join in when you were talking about ways that you use tarot in your life, because this year I thought I would try to have a more I don't know what you would call it, a ceremonial approach to my whole life. So that the turns of the year and kind of the month, the moon during the month, and more than natural changes rather than humans' ideas of holidays and so forth. And part of that is like, well, even during a week, kind of the pattern and the pattern during the month. And so I use the tarot in conjunction with that. I do a layout usually at least once a month, and often more frequently, kind of for what's going on. And it's an amazingly it's amazingly accurate. I'm not, and often it's kind of like, well, what in the world? I don't get it, and then it turns out, oh, now I see. So I've been finding that that's really helpful. It kind of keeps me on track, and it keeps me focused in a certain way. And I was trying to think of the deck that I like so much, which is that wilderness deck, and I don't have it here with me.
Do you mean the Tarot of the Wild Unknown?
No, it's oh gosh.
Oh, I can picture it in my head too. As arrows,
Yeah.
Wildwood.
I shouldn't even
Wildwood. Yeah.
Wildwood Tarot, which I really like. I love the imagery, like this bear and the North Star, and it's amazing imagery for someone who really likes to be out in the wild. So I really like. I think that's a great deck too, and it's a traditional deck. It just has somewhat different interpretations. So yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And I'm seeing people are asking where they can find the book, and it's available through Bookshop if you want to support sort of independent bookstores. Of course, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and where else? IndieBound and Powell's.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's any bookstore, online or mortar, you can order it. If you're ordering it online, we recommend Bookshop or IndieBound because they actually support local indie bookstores. And if you're using Amazon or Goodreads, we encourage you to leave reviews of Heart's Compass. It makes a huge difference to have reviews of a book. So that would be great. I also wanted to add, when people were talking about how they could look at decks, I think tarot.com will show you all the different decks that you can choose. So you could look at the imagery there. That doesn't have anything to do with this book, but I was just. So yeah, order anywhere, and thank you all for coming. Thank you to Tania and Lisa and Gillian and Carrie for being here also. And Haley, who has been invisible, but thank you, Haley, for facilitating this whole thing. And yeah. Any questions, I guess you can email Tania at Heart's Compass site.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank Haley, who is a tarot journaling student and also a beautiful writer in her own right. So we'll be looking forward to her work as it comes out into the world as well. So yeah, thank you so much.
So good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for this beautiful book.
Can we do one photo with everybody holding it real quick?
Yes,
like,
I want to hold.
I feel like I need to do a screenshot of this just really quick before.
Oh, that's good. I like this.
Can I do a screenshot? There we go. All right, ladies, big smile. This is also on Facebook Live, so this is great. 1, 2, 3.
All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Tania, of course.
Oh, wonderful. Buy the book.